the YPN Lounge. It's Wednesday. We're excited. We have a special guest today, Jacob Sheets. And Mandy, I will let you go ahead and have everybody introduce themselves. And looks like we have maybe a topic question that we're going to ask everybody. So I'll let you get started.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mandy Cook. I am a realtor in Billings, Montana. I've been in the business. I'm in my 4th year. I'm also a YPN chair here in Billings. And setting expectations. Recently, I had a transaction where, we try to communicate and set those expectations as much as we can. We talk to them in person. We followed up with an email. We attach a document that has instructions on it. And sometimes at the end of the day, our clients don't follow the instructions and they skip down to the 3rd paragraph that says, you can also Google many home inspectors instead of these ones that our brokerage has worked with in the past that are listed on this page. So I recently had this, it was actually with my dad. I was helping him purchase a home here in Billings. And that's the only thing he heard was Google home inspectors. He didn't call my recommended ones. At the end of the day, it was fine and we communicated, but yeah, you got to do things 7 times, I guess, before people can understand and know what to do. So is it Alisa? We'll go on to you.
Close. Alisa, how are you?
Alisa.
So I am in Naples, Florida. I am just now an assistant managing broker and also chair of YPN. So it's been a little while since I've actually done transactions. I'm a non-compete broker, but the hardest I think was, especially in my area, dealing with a little bit older clientele that may not do so much with technology. And one disappeared completely on me. And so we were already under contract. We had people trying to see the home and I had to actually go to the house make sure that she was actually okay, knock on the door and get things set up. So yes, like you said, we can try our very hardest to set those expectations, but people are going to be people. So.
Yes, thank you. Kevin, on to you.
Hello, Kevin Percelli, executive of Miami YPN and YPN Global. Glad to be here. And here's my reminder to be on. I did okay today, just a few minutes late.
Did you ever set expectations, Kevin, and then no one met them in any line of your work?
I mean, I don't know. I try and have 0 expectations. If I have expectations, sometimes I'm the one that's disappointed. So, no, I mean, if you're available, great. If you're not, that's okay too. But my line of work is very different than what y'all do as far as that's concerned. I just run a network, so this boat's moving no matter what.
Brandy, on to you.
Hi guys, Brandy MacArthur. I'm the YPN Vice Chair here in Billings, Montana. And as far as setting expectations, I think the biggest issue that I feel like I need to address is clients who show up like 30 minutes late to a showing. Like, no, our time's up. Sorry.
That is a tough one. I sometimes
really late. 30 minutes is like
I have the opposite problem. I have to tell them, don't show up early. The seller won't leave until like right before the showing. So don't show up early. You're just wasting time. Just show up right when our showing is. Kyle, on to you.
Hello, I am Kyle Schultz from Omaha, Nebraska and Miami, Florida. I am on the NAR YPN Advisory Board. And I kind of missed the question, but I'm guessing it's talking about expectations and possibly them not being fulfilled by other individuals all the time. That happens frequently. Not so much with my clients, but I like to tell people what they can expect from me, such as like, hey, I work in the night for you. And I probably work just the same amount, but I'm shifting my schedule forward. So I'm available when you're not working. So I'm taking the mornings to myself, and you can contact me whenever. Just don't expect a response back from me if it's before noon, because that's when I take care of like my personal stuff, because I am spending my nights and weekends working for you when you actually need me. You don't need me anymore. Unless it's a time sensitive emergency negotiation type thing. That's a different story.
Great example. Andrew, thanks for joining us today. We're just doing quick introductions. If you can't talk, that's okay, and then a little thing about when you've set expectations and maybe those expectations weren't met by clients or other agents.
Well, other agents don't know what boundaries are, so we'll just stick with clients. So I'm Andrew Hersey. I'm on the advisory board with Kyle, and that's the only one I could see. I don't know if anybody else is on here. I'm driving as well, so I'm not going to swipe through. But hello, everybody. I always do for buyers. I do a buyer consult, and obviously listings. We do seller consultations as well. And my big thing is letting them know my hours. And I am not as strong as Kyle to tell them to take the mornings off, but I do tell them that I cut myself off at 8 o'clock every night. That's about when my kids go to bed. And then after my kids fall asleep, I need some me time before I rip somebody's head off. So it's really about letting them know up ahead. And unless, like Kyle said, unless it's a dire time-sensitive emergency, which there are no emergencies in real estate, just so you all know. There's no such thing as an emergency in real estate. It might seem like it at the time. Nothing is worth your mental sanity in this business enough to go outside of your boundaries. So that was really hard for me to understand when I first started. I would go anywhere, do anything up until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, go on vacation, and I'd be working the whole time. Now when I go on vacation or if I'm on a work trip, I will set aside 6 to 7 in the morning, 7 to 8 in the morning, and that's when I get my work done. And then 4 to 5 in the evening is when I will also return emails. But my focus on vacations is family and enjoying myself. So that's kind of how I set my boundaries. And I think once you realize that there's nothing that if you drop everything right now, you're going to get the same results that you would get if you dealt with it in an hour. So that's the biggest thing that I've really learned, is to prioritize things and not to stress myself out. I still stress myself out, but like less now.
Thank you. Billy.
Hey, Billy Parrott, Montana YPN chair, Billings YPN past chair. Yeah, this one hits home for me. I don't do dual agency anymore because I had an instance where I was working with a seller and I was also working with a buyer. That buyer wanted to buy my seller's property, and I told them up front at the beginning at buyer's consultation that I don't do dual agency, and here's why. And they really wanted this property, and I said, hey, I can refer this to somebody else. No, we want you to do it. And I said, okay, but remember, if I do dual agency, I can't say certain things. I'm very neutral at this point. Oh yeah, we're good. Okay, so we go through the transaction, and of course, when it gets down to it, they ask me questions that I, of course, cannot answer. And I told them that. Well, they got pretty upset, and they end up firing me as their buyer agent because of that. And I was like, I told you guys, like at the beginning, this is why I did not want to do this. So at this point now in my business, I will not do dual agency no matter what. So yeah, that was a learning lesson for me. Like you said, you can tell them till the cows come home, but they don't really listen or absorb the information as much as that you think that they are. So that was fun. So moving on to our friend Jacob Sheets. I'm sure you've got some fun stories for us. So today we're going to be talking about creating smoother transactions. by setting stronger expectations, which is kind of what we all just kind of talked about our stories here. So I'll let you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and then we'll let you get started.
Yeah, Billy, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone for having me here. Really excited. Kyle reached out to me and I'm like, absolutely, I want to be a part of anything here. My name is Jacob Sheets. I'm with eXp Realty. I'm out of the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area is where I live, but I'm kind of a crazy young kid that will cover basically the whole state. But if I'm not able to get out to a certain area, I've worked in the past like 5 years to like really garner the trust of borderline all the agents in the Wisconsin area, so that if I'm not available or something, I have referral partners or whatever. Sometimes if it's for referral commission, great, but otherwise it's just for brownie points. Everyone here should love the brownie points. So I've really built those connections to be kind of like going forward branding of like your Wisconsin realtor, and that's what I kind of strive for in the future, with a big professional goal that I've been chit-chatting with Kyle for a long time, of being on the NAR 30 under 30. So that's the big professional goal for me that I've been chasing after since I started about 5 years ago. And I'm super excited to be here and talking about being able to create smoother transactions through setting expectations. And I wanted to also, we'll get to it later. I know we're going to be very casual conversation style, but be able to leave and hopefully have people leave here going, wow, I actually took something away. I have something that I can apply into my buyer consultations, or how I communicate with other agents when I refer them out business, so that at the end of the day, I can actually apply something and I've learned something. I can level up in this area of business. By no means do I say I'm the best at everything that I do, but there are a few things that I do that I feel that hopefully can add value to everyone else. Real quick, the story, because everyone said to have a story. We usually learn the most from when we get burned, right? And in a matter of a couple months of real estate, you will probably get burned at least a couple, and 5 years has been getting burned a lot. The one biggest one that I've learned from, and I now kind of put into setting a strong expectation with my buyers and sellers, especially buyers during buyer consultation, was a time that I was working with someone, and every state has their different rules, right, of what buyer agency or buyer representation is in for like your actual state. But for us in Wisconsin, we have our, you can either act as a buyer's agent or a sub agent. And I set the expectation lightly up front, going, yeah, I mainly just work out a buyer agency. And, oh, great, you did such a good job. We'll hire you. They looked at me in the eyes. I drove them around the entire city. I called them on the phone. We did a voice call back to them, their whole family in the car, and I showed them every neighborhood in Cedarburg, the city of 12,000 people. I said, this is where your budget would be for this property. This is where you'd probably end up here. Here's the pros of this. You're close to the schools for your kids here. You're close to this, for walking downtown, for historic downtown Cedarburg. Cool. And then they looked at me when we got out of the car, and they get in my eyes, I've never had such good service. You are our guy. We're so excited to work with you. 8 a.m. almost every single Saturday, I got up and showed them houses for 5 months to the day. And then I learned from this to trust. Yellow flags are more dangerous than red flags. Red flags, you can go and be like, I don't want to work with you. Peace out. You're not valuing me my time later. The yellow flags are the things you really have to trust yourself on and take, precaution on. And the reason why I'm going longer into the story is because every single time they go, oh yeah, that buyer consult or the buyer agency you sent over for digital signature, we just forgot it. We'll get it to it before next time. And I was like, we really need to get that taken care of now. The 5 months go along, and we end up getting to a property that they love that's 1 block away from my in-laws that I go to every Monday now for dinner. And don't worry, not bitter at all, right? And I show the wife the property in the morning. The husband's out at his golf tournament, as they do, comes back to an open house later and asks the agent at the open house, if I write with you and list my property down in Whitefish Bay, both about $500,000 homes, how much could you discount if I cut out my agent? And they do that. They cut me out 5 months of 8 a.m., every single Saturday, and end up listing with them. I ended up pursuing that for some procuring cause, and I could have won all the way, because I had everything documented, but I ended up getting like a referral commission instead of going for like a full-fledged assault, because I didn't want to go over that. But regardless, now I use that, and I tell that story sometimes when I want to set a strong expectation in my buyer consultation, of explaining to them, say, hey, at the end of the day, when I have a buyer consultation, I only work out of buyer agency now. And if they get confused why, I tell them that story and they fully understand. And in that process of learning that experience, I now infuse into my buyer consultation as well. About halfway through, I explain buyer agency. And then at the end, I give them a to-do list and a checklist, which I can explain later. I'd say about 95% of the time, I leave my buyer consultations, whether it's in Zoom or it's in person, with a buyer representation agreement signed. And if I don't, I set the expectation it's done before any showings. And if they say, I really don't feel comfortable committing to that yet until I really know you, I say, totally fine. You know, if you don't want to marry me before dating me, I get it. I'll give you, 1 or 2 showings. Then after that, you can decide if you do want me as a buyer's agent, because I only want to be working in your best interest, showing you, giving you advice on price and condition that I can't really do as a sub-agent. So that was a longer intro, but I wanted to start because that's a full story of, how I've been burned in the past. We've all done that before, but how can we learn from those and apply those into setting good expectations going forward into transactions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I've actually confronted clients that have done that. But did you ever have a conversation with them? Like, what the heck, dude? Like, you know what I mean?
Okay, so yeah, they ghosted me. Surprise, very hard. And I kept the stream of communication for whole procuring cause thing going for, everything. But they completely ghosted me. I take my faith really seriously. And I'm, a Christian, all that good stuff. And I believe to serve others and to love those that have wronged us, right? And they probably thought I was trying to poison them. I wasn't. But during my pie giveaway, during the end of the year, I still even went to their house, hand delivered them a pie and said, hey, I know things didn't work out between us. It really was, it was unfortunate what ended up happening. But I just wanted to still say, at least at some point, I still appreciate you taking the time to work with me. In the back of my brain, am I at 100% level forgiveness? I'm working on it, but I think it's much more important to, I just abide by bless those that harm you, right? And be kind of the better man, right? So that's what I ended up doing. That was my confrontation. It wasn't so much a, screw you guys, get out of here. It was here's a pie, which I'm sure probably ended up immediately in the trash, but whatever.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard that from agents here in town. I don't know that because you're supposed to show grace, right? But I don't have that in me. I'm you took time away from my kids, my family, you know what I mean? And so I look at that as disrespect myself, but I have heard of agents that do that, bring them flowers, when they close, congratulations. I can't do that, but I think that's great that you can. And maybe it made them feel a little guilty. I don't know, but I just don't think that people really respect what we do, right? Because we do, we use our gas, we use our time. We're driving them around, taking a whole weekend, So I think it's explaining to them hey, this is how I feed my kids or my family or myself,
Yep.
So yeah, it's fun. I love that story. I mean, I don't like it for you, but I think a lot of us have probably dealt with that once in our career.
Yeah, and I just bring that up for the context because I'm sure we can all relate to that.
Oh, yeah.
It's and the default from a buyer perspective is very real, right? Because in their brain, if I get as many agents working for me as possible, I will have the highest likelihood of success, right? So that in their brain makes the most amount of sense, which is why then setting the expectation of I'm committed to you, you're committed to me, we're going forward is the way to do it. And how I get to that point in the consultation too, I in a past position, a past job that I worked too, I'm much more relational and not transaction and not high pressure. But one tactic they used was called a setup for a pre-close scenario. So I talk about buyer agency and sub-agency in the middle of my consultation. And then I explain that. And I also say I only work as a buyer's agent. And then I don't ask them for me to be their buyer's agent until the very, very end. And the very, very end, I go through a checklist of homework for them. And I have, which I can screen share and show sometime later, but I have these 3 or 4 things that I have as a checklist. I say, print it out if it's not in person, or I have it in person to give to them and say, you can put this on your fridge if you want, and we can check it out and go through, and that's where you know you're on track or not. And one of them on there is complete your buyer agency paperwork. And I don't say contract, I don't say agreement, I say paperwork, because that is just in their brain a lot less intense, but I explained everything of what it goes into that. And I had that as a checklist, and then at the end I kind of nonchalantly, almost always get a laugh, and I go, oh, here's your checklist. I kind of forgot to ask this, but would you like me to be your buyer's agent? And then they always say yes, or they say, I don't know. And then if they say I don't know, then I go into the whole spiel of like, that's totally cool, but like I said, I only work as buyer agent, but we can date for a few beforehand. But then after that, then I would have a buyer agency. So that's how I kind of get it all together there.
I'm going to use the word date because I kind of say the same thing. I don't like to kiss on the first date, but eventually, I will ask you for your loyalty to work with me.
Yeah.
If you're not, like you said, your time is valuable, as is mine. This is how this is my business. And eventually I will ask for your loyalty after a few showings. And I haven't had any issues since. So.
Hey, Joanne, how are you?
I am good. I was like rushing to get home, so I wasn't in the car yet again. So thanks for getting this started.
Yeah, do you want to share any expectation stories with us? We all shared a little story of how we were maybe setting an expectation and it didn't go well.
Yeah, there's always like, it's either hit or miss. I do like the date approach. What I have found is like the quicker you are in showing a property and genuinely asking some questions while you're in person, where are you coming from? How you doing? Like just being human, right? And having that conversation tends to go well. There's a few things that I do here. I'm in the New Jersey area, and not a lot of agents answer their phones. Our market's still a little nutty right now, and the rental market is crazier than ever. So even these rentals, people don't realize them or take them as an opportunity, right? And I do set expectations, even on rentals, to say, listen, I'm here, whatever you need, any resources, I'm going to give you, your tenants' rights. I think when they start to hear that about this and looking out for their best interest, all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, well, now I'm adding to my database, right? And then little by little, I'm going to say, hey, have you ever thought about buying a home, right? So now these are not even cold leads, they're warm leads that I've been able to capture and potentially introduce them to home buying, because what everyone's paying right now for rentals here is kind of nuts. It's almost like the down payment to a home, given the broker fee, month and a half security deposit, first month's rent up front. I was like, do you know that's like $12,000 that can go towards a home? And it's my rental listing, right? So they're like, oh, you're not just trying to get my money. I was like, no, absolutely not. Like, there's a rhyme or reason. And, one of the things that I do for rental clients, because they've converted so many to first-time home buyers, is I don't run their credit right away. I said, listen, let me pre-qualify you. Give me your paperwork, give me your proof of income, give me your ID, give me your application. I will make sure you have your references done. And then once I have all that, then I will run your credit check. Right? We don't always have to do that. Now, I don't take them to see anything, right? Until I kind of do that pre-qualification. I'm on the computer. It's all digital. I can see it on the go, right? So it's not costing me too much, but now I built that relationship and trust to say, oh, this person's not just taking my money for the heck of it, right? Like, do we need to qualify? Yeah. But I'm going to say, listen, this is why you're not getting accepted for rentals, for example. And this is what you can work on if you do want to buy in the future. So I definitely have set those expectations before, what's needed and necessary. And then I just finished recording a video, for example, on rentals, on what's necessary. Like, what's the paperwork you need? What are some of those examples? And what are your rights as tenants to be able to ask questions? So like, for example, I have agents here that do not allow anyone to see the rental property until they have a fully completed application, and they charge way too much for application fees. I think that's crazy, right? So that alone sets expectations of, oh, they're looking out for me. And I kind of take the same approach with buyers. Who are you working with, your lender? I'd love to have a conversation with them because we're on the same team, and I want to make sure that we're in sync for your interests, right? In your interest to buy the home that you want. And that's going to allow us to set up a strategy on, you know, the down payment. Maybe you don't need to put so much down and you can get more cash in your pocket. And they're like, oh yeah, this is great. I think one of the things I've been so surprised at, given the amount of first-time home buyers on the market here, is even though they have access to all this information online, they have no clue. They're so green. And I start talking to them in lingos, and they're like, huh, what is that? I'm like, oh, you don't know what that is? Oh, okay, yeah, let's go back to basics. And we're doing that in line at an open house, right? So, and then other ones, they just don't go well. Like I had someone, this was a good one. I had a story, I showed the buyers, like, I don't even know, like 13 properties at that point. And I probably should have sent them a buyer agreement at that point, but I didn't. And it was a great house, checked off all their boxes. And even the basement that was finished, you could see all the repair work they did to the foundation, and like, it was great. I was like, oh, and it's exposed. So the inspector's gonna like be able to actually inspect it. And he was like, no, that means there's something wrong with the house. I'm like, well, it's a house from 1922. Yeah, they did their due diligence and made sure it's not falling down. So yeah, there was something wrong, but now not anymore. And he was like, yeah, no. And I said, let me ask you something. If you were to buy a car that was in a previous accident but got fixed, you wouldn't buy the car? If it was in your price range, if it was in your budget? So what's the difference with the house? And they didn't like that very much. And they stopped calling me, and they called the lender that was working with me that I recommended to them. And they were like, she was so mean. I was like, okay, no more 13 properties, because that just means you're not ready to buy, right? So no love lost there, but that was interesting. I said, okay, maybe you have to coddle them a lot more.
I actually really love that story personally, because I found that very similar to me too. Like, if you're familiar with the DISC personality test, right? Like, I'm a crazy high I, and like before I got married, I was like a 0D, and then I got married, it's like halfway up here, then I got into real estate, and it's like up here, right? But so now, like, as I get into talking with people and telling them these stories and all this other stuff too, and having these conversations and trying to advise them the best way I can, sometimes we get hurt so many times, and we get taken advantage of so many times and burned so many, we just instantly will default to that D right away, and be like, this is how it is. Like, just deal with it. Stop wasting my time from that, past deal PTSD, or maybe they are wasting your time. When instead, they might have been a high S, and they're like, ooh, yep, that didn't go well. I didn't like that. So I feel you. I feel you so hard on that, because now sometimes I have to catch myself going out of that, like, high D personality type that needs to be done to, like, protect yourself and your time sometimes. And sometimes it's needed, and, we'll call the herd a little. But sometimes, and then those S's that are out there, they're like, oof, sorry, Joanna, game over.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. And, I definitely go back to the DISC profile sometimes. And even just within, like, the wife and the husband, or the partner, or
Yes.
whomever, I'm just, oh, these are so different personalities. Like, I have no way in, right, in that sense. But so at that point, you're just talking facts. Be like, I can only give you the information that I know. We're both seeing the same thing in my experience. This is a good thing. And what was interesting is they were like, well, you're just looking for us to buy a house right away. And I was like, I'm actually not, because if that was the case, I would have done that 10 houses ago. So, it was kind of like a little bit of an eye opener. It was definitely feedback for me to just say, okay, let me reapproach that situation a little bit differently next time. But I still send them cards and emails. They still open it. So they're always watching, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're
But-
probably like, it's the mean lady.
Absolutely. But what's funny is that I think during that time, it was last year, I made a video. I made a video of like, hey guys, when you have all this exposed, it's actually a good thing. And make sure that if you can schedule your inspection on a rainy day, even better, right? Like all these little tips to add value for them to see like all the comments, like, oh my God, this is great. And I really hope they saw it. So they can be like, damn, I'm like, they missed out on such a good home. I felt so bad, but I was like, well, what can you do, right? That means they just were not ready.
And doing that through a story too, I found has been the easiest way. Like when I tell people about how I wasted 5 months of my time, they can understand my frame of reference. Or like if I almost tell all my buyers in the consultation as well at the beginning of like, I've had buyers, just so that you know, that I've worked with for 3 years and we still are looking for the right place. I've also had buyers at the beginning of the pandemic that we looked at one house together. They looked at it from their couch. They trusted me with a video call. We got it under contract. It was the first house they ever bought. And it was literally instant. That was the same day we did a buyer consultation. So I've told people that so that it shatters their thinking. Where a lot of them think I need to be looking for at least 3 months to find the perfect home, or whatever, or I'm going to wait for 6 months until my lease is completely done. I shatter that expectation at the beginning so that when they get in there, they can go, oh, when the right thing pops up, it might be literally today. Or it might be in 3 years, but when it is ready, then I'm ready to pull the trigger instead of like just waiting for some arbitrary timeline in their brain.
Absolutely.
That's something that goes off of like ninja sales training. If any of you are familiar with that, is people have fear that they are missing out on other properties, that they have not done their due diligence. So setting that expectation that it's okay at the very first buyer's consultation gives them that permission in their mind unconsciously that yes, it's okay. And even saying like, more than likely, like, we very well could find the either house on the very first day. And also setting the expectation that there's no 100% perfect house. Like if 85% is the target, that also helps them realize, okay, well, I mean, this is a 90% house. I want 100%, but there is letting them know that there is no 100% house. 90% is really good. That's above the 85. So if it meets the majority of your criteria, you can see yourself living in it for as long as your goal is to live in that particular property, then you might want to think about putting in an offer in.
My team leader did a story pretty much on that fear, right? And the FOMO, that was happening. This was last year. And that video, and she's doing it because of a client the same way, right? She had a client that was looking for in the beginning of the pandemic, couldn't decide because there was like, oh, there's going to be something better. The pandemic, I mean, it's been 3 years. They haven't been able to buy. And now their purchasing power, right? Completely dwindled. And she made a story about that on Instagram. And she said that within like 2 months, I think, or like 2 weeks, excuse me, he approached her and said, hey, is that story about me? And she didn't want to lie. And she was like, yeah, because I cared so much about finding you the right place. And this is a reality. And you're not the only one, right? She said that lit up such a fire under the client and said, wow, like, this is the new reality. Let's just get moving because now I've lost on 3 years of building wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So she said it was like that was the best thing. So anytime we have the opportunity to make a story of a client situation, obviously without disclosing the client, but knowing that they may see the story, right, could help. Not just them, right, but then the rest of any of your followers and people that share the story with that, because it's becoming very common. I've seen the remorse, the level of buyer's remorse still at an all-time high. Never seen that before. And I tell clients, it's like, that doesn't make us feel great. We just feel guilty afterwards, even if it's 2 years later, like, oh my God, this person, like knowing that they are just regretting that decision, never a good thing for anybody. So.
Yeah, I think it's seeing those. Have you seen those? What your mortgage is today with the interest rates versus what your mortgage was. And it's like, oh, that is huge.
Right.
And I think that is a wake up call for people. They're like, dang it. Cause I know I had some clients that are like, oh, I'm just gonna wait. And then all of a sudden, you know, what happened with the market here recently with the interest rates. And now they're like, shoot.
Yeah.
And we'll never, well, I can't say never, but most likely we'll never see those rates that low again, unless something crazy happens. So
Yeah. 275. I just had a for sale by owner sell. He's like, I don't care. I was like, dang, how can I assume his mortgage?
right.
But he didn't care, right? His goal was to take the equity because the HELOC wasn't going to make sense either. So he was like, you know what? It's okay. I have no fear of that. Something better will come up in the future. And I was like, oh my God. So I'm actually preparing a story about him.
Yeah. Well, and then on the assumable loans, those aren't as easy as you think.
Nope.
I know here locally anyway, I've talked to a few lenders. I mean, it could be like a short sale, like
Yep.
It could take that long. So
All the qualifications. I was like, oh God.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what influencers started talking about assumable mortgages, and now buyers are like, can I take someone's mortgage over? I was like, oh God.
yeah, it's not as easy as you think.
I know. I was like, talk to this lender. It's their problem, not mine.
Did anybody else have any questions for Jacob or comments before he continues? I want to open it up for everyone. Okay, Jacob, I
know from talking to Jacob that he has a really unique approach to handling agent-to-agent referrals to other markets. So he and I talked a little bit about it, but I am looking forward to him expanding on his more thorough process than I think a lot of people do. So I don't know if that's a segue or not, but you take that as you will.
Sure, 100%. Thanks, Kyle. But yes, we can shift gears over to that, and we can always go back to buyer agency consultation stuff. I mean, it works both for buyer consultation and listing consultation, but like I said earlier, I could always screen share later too of like an example of each of these. I'll probably pull it up later, but going into the whole agent-to-agent referral side of things, it is the most frustrating thing. When you have, especially like if it's someone that's brand new, it kind of, you know, sucks when someone drops the ball, but like when it's a client, especially of yours, and you're like, oh, we're going to move to Florida. We're coming in from, you know, we're moving back from, you know, Montana, right? And you refer them to an agent, and then you reach back out to them a couple months later or whatever, and you're like, hey, just wanted to check in to see how Kyle's treating you. And they're like, oh, actually, I just closed, you know, on a property last month. He never really followed up after that, you know, that text message you sent with them. So I just went with someone else. I called Zillow, and it's like, and not just because like it's like, oh, a 25% or 30% referral fee or whatever. It's not just about the money, right? It's more about like the relationship and the trust. Like everything is like expectations, relationship, and trust with those clients. And now that that's gone, it's really hard to sometimes build that back. Some people take it personally, some don't care. Like it was fine, whatever. But deep down, like there's that little bit that's there that you're like, man, like why did you do that? And the visual I kind of think of is, and I've learned this by giving out so many referrals that have not turned to anything. And I want to preface this by putting this in, if you do this the right way, you build unbelievable strong relationships with high producing realtors all over the US or world, really. If you do it wrong, you look just like, ugh, yuck, no thank you, I don't want anything to do with this type of agent. And it's all about, you know, setting the expectations and being completely upfront, completely transparent, completely honest, and completely like showing them the roadmap to these other agents as well. And then at the end of the day, when you do that, you end up with 2 or 3 really strong agent connections that I usually stay in touch with all the time. And some of you on this group are probably one of those people that are good partners going forward in the future. But anyway, so how I do that, I'll actually just screen share. It's easier to show that, and it won't be like a long thing. It'll just be real brief. Right here, this is an example. Let's move this bar. Okay, so here's like an example of how I get the referrals and everything, and also a chat with my mom, apparently. But right here is how I usually structure these referrals and everything. The first thing up front is not like who's out here, who wants a referral, right? Every agent wants a referral. So every agent will be like, I want it. And it's just giving the carrot away and being like, I have no leverage in this. I have no stake or whatever. Who just wants it? And in this scenario, it's being able to go in and say, who are your trusted partners? And I always put this in the YPN, the NAR YPN. I've tried it in so many things. I've tried brokerage specific referral groups. I've tried general Facebook group referral groups. And this is by far the best community, the best group of people to get high producing agents that actually care about your clients and will actually build a relationship with you. So it's in this NAR YPN page, and then being able to post this. I've done all sorts of posts for different areas. And saying, who have you directly worked with that's brought a client to closing? So you've already worked with a realtor that has brought a client to closing. And then explaining what it's like, and then thank you for your connections. And then there's always a bunch of people that will comment below, and I open up a spreadsheet and I see who has the most amount of referrals. And usually there's 2 or 3 agents in that city or in that region of that state that gets referred way more, like 10, 12 times. And I will put that in there, and I will make a relationship, because I'll do a little due diligence of what their past sales have been in a certain area or whatever. But then I will personally call them, and I will, say, hey, just want to hear your story, see how you operate, see how you do business. And, I have a referral in the future that I'm wanting to get connected with the right agent, want to see how you do business. I build a relationship with them first, and then, want to have that type of connection with them. And then after that, explain and completely transparent and honest, go, hey, I wanted the best for my client, make sure that they are well taken care of. So I usually give them the option and the opportunity that if they just want me to introduce you to one person, I'll just do that. Or a lot of them, I give them the opportunity to interview other agents just to see who's the best fit for them, right? Both how they take care of business, personality. We all know that people pick realtors for different reasons. And I tell them up front, like, hey, just so that you're aware, and up front, I will usually give them 2 or 3 people to reach out to, as long as you're okay with that and you understand that before I make that type of introduction or give your contact info out. As long as you're okay with that, that's how that operates. And then you just go, oh yeah, thanks for telling me, because this is where if you don't do it right, it goes really, really bad, because you're like, if they think they're the only person getting that contact, one, they take it for granted and they don't follow up, right? And they're like, oh man, like, they just gave me this lead. It's a great lead. Okay, whatever. They'll always be there. They'll always follow up. We've always had people that you work harder for, right? When it's like, oh, I've built a relationship with that other agent on the other end, and I built a relationship with the client, and there's that stickiness factor there. Where if you just give someone a lead, say, here's the contact info, go for it. Go ahead, Kyle. Then it usually just gets lost in their database, their CRM, or if it never even makes it in their CRM. This way you have that relationship, you build a connection, and then also say, like, it's up at the end of the day, I want my client to do what's best working for them. So when they interview people, you'll get a fair shot at it just like those other people. But if they don't know that, like, hey, I'm going to give it to a couple of people so they can interview for the job, then at that point they're like, ugh, well, why did he give it to multiple people? And I'm explaining because it's like the best interest of them, but also it builds trust and relationship with those other agents in that area, because you're like, wow, they really value me and trust me and care about how their clients are being taken care of. They also care, like, about the other people that would come back my way. So yeah, that's how I build that type of relationship, that trust, and then usually give that contact info over to my client and say, hey, other agent I'm referring, you too, they'll expect a reach out in the next couple of days from those people if they want to, do their own due diligence in the back end, or just interview all 2 or 3 people. And then I have a good, strong relationship with those clients. And if you break it down real quick, that's the difference between just giving a carrot, saying, here you go, versus, like, not so much dangling a carrot, but giving the opportunity to go after and chase it. Because I'm sure all of us have been in a scenario where you interview for a job or a client, or you have a referral. You almost always work harder when you get that, don't you? Like, because you've earned it. you want it, you go for it. It's not just something you take for granted, and like you are excited to be working with those people. That's kind of what this has built, going from there, if that makes sense. And then I have other stuff on the buyer agent side, but hopefully, Kyle, that's a little more in depth of how I do that. Does that make sense? Was that clear?
I love that. I actually just had a experience which I'm still flabbergasted. I had a client of mine call me. I was at state meetings, and her dad, who lives in Wyoming, is getting put in an assisted living, so they need to sell his house. She's like, "Do you know anybody in Wyoming in this particular area?" Well, I know a bunch of agents that I met last year at state convention, but I was like, "Ooh, I don't know about that particular area." So I reached out to a Wyoming agent and said, "Hey, who do you know that services this? That's awesome." She gave me a name. I completely trust her because I know this agent. So I called her up and said, "Hey, are you willing to take on a referral? It's a client of mine, blah, blah." "Oh yeah, I'm on it. Yeah, thank you, whatever." Okay. So I gave my client the number. She called. She never heard back from her. I was like, "Are you kidding?" Because I called her to follow up a week later. I'm like, "Hey, how's it going? She taking care of you?" "Oh, she never got back to me. I left a couple messages, so I went with a different agent." And I was like, so I texted the agent. I'm like, "Hey, how come you didn't respond? How come you didn't get back?" Nothing. I haven't heard anything back. So unless something happened to her, like, dude,
And
like, if you can't take it, don't say you can,
yeah, and that doesn't, to be clear too, like that doesn't necessarily make them a bad agent or a bad person, because that happens to all of us, right? Like we all sometimes drop a ball here and there, but like when we create that type of connection, ideally, like sometimes I'll even, the next step, if they say they want to work with someone, I offer to sit in a buyer consultation with anyone they want to as well, because then you build that stickiness, whether it's a group text message when they've decided which agent they're going to work with, or a group Zoom meeting is even better to then create a group text message. Then I just say, just keep me in the loop of everything that's going on. You have no idea how many times when an agent ghosts, or when a client ghosts that an agent you built a connection with, I've seen text messages come through 3, 4, 5 from the referred agent that the client doesn't respond to. I send one short little thing of like, "Hey, just checking in to see how it's going." And that first stickiness then like revitalizes the whole relationship and brings it back together. So yeah, I mean, I feel you so hard, Billy, on that. Like, it's crazy. But at the same time, like, when we build, hopefully the goal of that strategy and how we go about it is like, if we hopefully build that connection at that beginning point, hopefully that stickiness of all three parties actually comes together instead of it being like, on back burner. And they've had to fight for it, not fight, aggressive competition, angry fight, bloody knife fight, but like true, honest, professional, this is why you should work with me, right?
Yeah, I like that. And I think the reason why I have never been that way, which now I'm going to probably change that, is I don't want to be like the helicopter agent, right?
Yeah, right.
I feel like I should be able to trust you to do your job, you know what I mean? And so I don't, when I refer something out, I don't like expect you to constantly update me on every single thing. Like obviously, here and there, but now I'm like, well, maybe I should start being more involved and making sure that they're on the right track, because it's on me, right? So it probably made me look like, well, she doesn't know like what she's talking about. She doesn't know what agent to refer me to, So yeah, I like that. I'm gonna start changing that up a little bit. I'm gonna be that helicopter agent now.
Yeah, and there's that. Yeah, you can be a helicopter, that works, and but sometimes too, like, two things from a business owner perspective, right? As us being a business owner, like two things in that. One, it is a real pillar of income for your business, right? And most people don't treat it that way. They treat it as like, it could be an extra bonus, it'll be an extra nice little pop for me. But it's like, no, like that's part of your business. And two is like, that is, like I said at the beginning, it's part of the client experience. It's part of how do they feel when they have your name come up, and do they trust you, how that handed off went, like how involved were they in that, and sometimes people don't want to be super involved and want that to be the case, but I like to then show like it's almost like a white glove concierge type of handoff, instead of being like, oh, go ahead, yep, just call, whatever, get connected, and they feel that level of like compassion that I have for them, that make sure like, holy cow, I asked for a good connection, they gave me 3 good agents to pick from, wow, he is connected. He knows how to do this thing. I trust him, right?
Yeah, I've done that too, where I've had to interview I mean, I think I've always interviewed agents, or I've at least had a conversation with them. Like, here are the expectations. This is the type of client they are.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because you know the person, and I've had that, where I started to really say, let me give the client more details about how the referral system works. One was my uncle. He moved from Puerto Rico to Massachusetts, and he was looking for a home. And I said, oh my God, this is great. And I would, in my head, I'm like, I'm going to give him my referral fee as a gift, right? And he didn't use the referral agent that I oh my God, gracefully searched for, because it's such a rural area of Massachusetts. And I followed up with her, and she's like, yeah, they never text me back, and they never called me back. I said, really? And I was like, what the hell? I called my uncle, and I'm like, hey, what the hell happened? And he's like, we went to an open house, and this guy really followed up with us. And I was like, why do you feel guilty? I was like, but that's what they're supposed to do. So I was like, oh, they just don't know the process. And I did tell him, I was like, listen, this is not to make you feel guilty, but they give me 25%, and that was going to go to you as in my gift to you. And he was like, shit. And I was like, but like, why didn't you ask? Like, he's one of my closest uncles. I was like, how did you not feel comfortable to ask me? And I just find it even more weird that family doesn't even go to the experts that are in the family of real estate. So I was like, what is it? Clients become friends before friends become clients. And that is very true.
Yeah.
So I definitely go into the process a lot more after that.
Yeah. And the way I keep myself organized, I mean, obviously in my CRM, I will have contacts for like my referral agents too, and connect them to the clients. But on top of that too, like I have like blue folders for buyers, red folders for sellers, and I have yellows for referrals. So like I actually keep a completely separate file, I mean, in my CRM, but a physical one, so that I can quickly go through it and be like, okay, I treat it seriously as part of my business, and not just like, oh, red and blue, buyer, seller, and then referrals or whatever whenever they come in. It's like, no, like this is a serious part of my business, right? So I have that separate organizational system too.
One thing that I really like about the vetting that you do, so a lot of times on the Facebook groups and things like that, whether it's YPN one or any of the other ones out there, that there are the cheerleading groups where there are groups of agents from around the country that pay to be part of this group that just refer each other, whether they've even met the person or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I'm guessing a good way to weed some of that out. And then do you have any other criteria that you prefer? Like I personally, I'd like to give business to like local people and stuff in my area, but then people that are also like doing good things for the industry, for the world, something like that. So like actually being involved in YPN and the associations is important to me. If you're a major investor in RPAC, that's a great check mark next to your name too. Do you have any criteria like that you kind of look for too?
Great question. And I think that would be a good personal conviction for each of us as our own business owner, like something that's important to you if they do it too, right? I think that's awesome that you do that. And for me, it's more of, I like to learn, most of these phone calls are like 30-minute to 45-minute long phone calls that I have with these agents after I found out who are the 2 or 3 really good ones. And I just try to find out everything about their business. And I learn a lot in the process too. But like some of the times I learn they're independent agents with no admin help. And sometimes I learn they're independent with admin. Sometimes I learn that they are teams and they actually are just managing the team and they're going to be handed off to another buyer's agent or a listing agent. And I just try to learn everything. And in that conversation, you might find out, are they an RPAC major investor? Are they whatever? And if that's important to you, you can have that as kind of your checkbox. And for me, it's more about, I learn almost everything that I can, and then I regurgitate that in a nicer way than 30-minute conversation. But I bring that up and digest it and give it back to my clients, usually in an email saying, here's Kyle, he's really good at doing XYZ, this is important to him, whatever. Here's Billy, she's this, blah, 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 and this is how she does work, and blah, blah, blah. And this, I kind of break it down so they can decide what's important to them as a client. Where if you want to take a little more ownership of, I only want the people that are major investors or, are on a board at a YPN, go ahead and use that as an opportunity. But what I found in the past, Kyle, though, is that if I have that as my main criteria filter, I sometimes lose out on some of the best agents, because some of the best agents that are out pounding the pavement for their clients every single day, unfortunately aren't always involved in doing those extracurricular type things as well, which if that's kind of what you would for sure want as your main criteria, that's fine. But like for me, I care more about just my client being fully taken care of. And if they're part of that extra stuff, I see it as like a cherry on top.
Yeah, I didn't mean like as the main criteria, like
right.
The current YPN share, like, oh, this is for you now. But that's
and
a criteria to like help boost, because I've learned that a lot of the people that are involved are also some of the best agents. Now that's not going to be the case for everyone, obviously. There are amazing agents that are not involved. I don't know why they're not involved, but they're good too.
I will usually put it, like if I find out that they are, so here's a good food for thought. Some clients will actually view that other agents' involvement as a distraction to their business, which is crazy. But which is why I don't always like lead with that, but I'll put it as a side note, right? Of saying, hey, this person's also, the state chair for their YPN or their whatever. I won't be as the main thing, because sometimes people will go, oh, they're doing all this extra, or they're doing more for their community, or they're doing whatever, and they see that as a distraction, which I think is absurd and wildly crazy. But some clients do think that way, so I like to lead with, how are they going to serve you first, and then here's a few extra bonus benefits too. Great question, Kyle. Good long answer for you there. I see that we just have a couple minutes most likely left here, but I wanted to real quick, if it's okay with you guys, just screen share to show a little bit of that kind of buyer consultation packet that I had. Move this. Okay. Screen share. Okay, so this right here, you can see on the side, like this is the whole consultation packet that I've personally created myself with a graphic designer. But weaved into every single one of these is if you can take anything away from today, that's the biggest value add, is probably write down every single objection you could possibly think of. And then next to it, every single question anyone could possibly ask about the process. And ask yourself, is that in my packet? Is that addressed in my consultation in some way, shape, or form? Because if it's not, they're thinking about it, right? So peppered into this consultation packet, I've gone through every single thing that I could possibly think of, and I put it in beforehand. It's like, oh, you look like you're 12 years old. Are you actually qualified? Yes, I am actually qualified. Here's 2 slides about it, okay? And, oh, here, you're an independent agent. What does that mean? Or you're starting to lead a team. What does that mean? Here's all this extra stuff that's here. My core values are here. Here's about my brokerage of like, okay, some people actually just care about what brokerage do you work for. Here's a little bit about them. But this is the most important thing here. I stop and usually talk on this and set expectations on this one slide for sometimes 20, 30 minutes and go through everything here. And I start by saying, hey, okay, guys, this is going to be like a super easy 3-step process. And we only like to step into each box until we're done checking off everything in the prior box, because otherwise it gets confusing and complicated. So I'm like, right now we're in our buyer consultation. We want to make sure your pre-approval is taken care of. We get your MLS portal set up, and we get our buyer agency paperwork taken care of, so that when we start going into box 2 and start showings, we're ready to go. We have no buyer's remorse. We have no confusing, expectation of what's going on. We get all this taken care of, and then we jump into box 2. And then once box 2 is completed, then we jump to box 3. And then I start explaining the buyer consultation, how pre-approval works, I'm building trust there, and I'm adding value, MLS portal. And then I simply explain the buyer agency, and I jump into explaining, what a realtor's job is, and then what is a buyer's agent versus a sub-agent, and what can both agents do, but what is different between buyer agency, sub-agency, and I tell them, and this is a huge deal because NAR getting into lawsuits about, not being completely transparent of how buyer agency stuff works. I show them a graphic of how does the commission work, because if you tell anyone, oh, the seller's paying for my commission, I wouldn't believe that. I bought my first house before I was a realtor. I was going to save money because I'm a freaking smart guy. I'm going to go straight to that listing agent, and I don't have to pay an agent anything. Right? They just got both sides, and I had no one working for me in my best interest, right? Dummy, dumb. You're a dummy. Jacob, come on. So I tell them, and I'm like, this is how it works. This is physically how it works, because they're going to be thinking, whether you think or you explain it or not, how the heck is this guy getting paid and how much is it going to cost me, right? So I explain this is the flow of a normal transaction, how this usually operates. If we get something off market, then of course, we would talk about whatever's in our buyer broker agreement, on how that's going to be compensated and how I'm going to get compensated. But I can go into that, some other time. If someone wants to privately reach out to me, I'd be more than happy to explain how I do that. But then I go back, I touch on all this buyer agency stuff as part 1, and I go back to here, and I don't ask them about how, do you want me to be your buyer's agent, right? I go and I explain all of it, I value add, and I explain it's just part of the process, right? And it becomes a nonchalant, it becomes oh yeah, okay, that makes sense of why I would want that. But I don't ask for it yet. It's like a pre-close of I added all this value. Then I explain how the search works, and they kind of forget a little bit about this back part and all this stuff. And then I talk about the whole process. If they've already gone through it, I briefly touch on this, but if it's a first-time buyer, I go through everything step by step, how many days it takes for this, how you can be more competitive. And we stick on this, and I ask, after I'm done with each one box, I say, do you have any questions about that? And then they go yes or no. Okay, we go to the next one. And then at the end, I go through all these other things, and it's going through about the actual process, my showings, what it is like, this is a big thing of I'm a pricing strategy advisor. If you guys haven't taken that with NAR PSA certification, do it today. Sign up for it today. It gets so. I go through. I still have the same binder, and I go through on pricing every. This is in the slide is in my buyer consultation and listing consultation of saying I am a pricing strategy advisor. There's your appraisers, there's your realtors. I'm kind of a step up above, but I'm not quite at appraisal level, so it's not a guarantee of how it's going to appraise out. But you can trust that, when we write an offer on something or we list on the price, my range is going to be pretty darn spot on. So you can trust me because I've gone through that extra, training. But needless to say, we go through all this other stuff. We go through, you have an accepted offer, what does it look like? And here's the page. Okay, if you want to take a screenshot, go for it. And if you didn't take a screenshot of the last one, I'll go back again in a minute so you can feel free to rip off and duplicate if you want. But here's the step. I say, here's your homework. Here's your checklist of what you need to get done to get out of box 1 into box 2, right? And into the showing of the homes. And I say, completing your buyer agency paperwork, filling out your buyer info forms. Oh, sorry, Kyle. I forgot to ask. Do you want me to be your buyer's agent? And then they'll go, oh, yeah, of course I want you to be a buyer's agent. Great. I'll have my assistant, as soon as I'm done with this, they'll be emailing you out both a physical PDF so you can review, if you can feel comfortable. We can ask any questions before you sign, not a problem. But also, if you just want to get it done and get it completed as soon as possible so we can get into the homes as soon as possible, all you have to do is click those links that'll come your way for digital signature, and it'll be done. And we'll have it on file. And then I'm excited to work with you, Kyle. I think it'll be great, and I'm excited to be your buyer's agent. And then after that, you want to get familiar with your MLS portal, get pre-approved, set up, as soon as possible. So you roll right in from that, so you make it a little bit less of a big deal or big commitment decision. And going, duh, why wouldn't I want you as your buyer's agent? Why would you just showed me how, you showed me why it's more important and valuable. And so it's just part of the process. I'm going to check that off. I'm going to do that today, get it done so I can get into box 2. So that's a few extra minutes for you, and I hope that was valuable information and explanation for all you guys to set some expectations.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Jacob.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, no, thanks for taking the time today to chat with us. I came with some nuggets for sure. So thank you. Anybody have any quick questions, last minute comments for Jacob before we end today?
How can people get in touch with you if they have follow-up questions?
It's gonna say, I'm like, what's your
or-
Instagram?
Yes. Okay. So you can just reach out to me and give me a call or text me the best way. Other than that, I mean, the other ways, Facebook is my main form of communication for social media stuff and content. Connect with me on my Facebook page. Connect with me on my YouTube. Subscribe. Shameless plug. My Instagram is pretty much a cannibalism of my Facebook. I'm less of an Instagram guy, more of a Facebook guy that I repurpose there. So like Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube are my main ecosystems that I live in, and Instagram's kind of just an extra for me. It's different for other agents, but those are the best ones. So connect with me on those social, best for communication, and then otherwise, reach out, connect with me on there. Otherwise, my call or text anytime. I'm sure if you find me on there, you will have my personal contact info plastered everywhere. So
Awesome. Thank you. Kevin, do you want to tell us who we're having on next week?
Yes. Who are we having on next week? I was kind of in a different thought.
Robert Gideon.
Who?
Robert.
Oh yeah, Robert Gideon. That's right, Robert Gideon III. This is actually Kyle's. I mean, Robert's my friend, but Kyle did a lot of the legwork to get this one done. So, well done to you, Kyle, for getting 2 amazing guests in a row onto the YPN Lounge Live. And we got a lot of other exciting guests coming up too. So be sure to kick it with us each and every week. I gotta say, I was scrolling on Facebook to see all the faces on our live this week was pretty amazing. And thank you everybody for your participation. You are always welcome to come with us either Wednesday or Thursday, depending on the guest availability at, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, 11
Standard.
11 a.m. Eastern, and then 8 Pacific. Sorry, I think I left out Central Time Zone, but you guys get the gist. And if you guys are ever looking for this content in the future, you're like, oh man, Jacob said something so amazing. Where can I review this? You can find it on Billy's Facebook page. You can find it on Mandy's Facebook page. You can find it on Kyle's Facebook page. And if you forget all those names, of course, it'll always be available at YPN Global as well. So if it's not on a channel that you thought it was going to be on, remember, there's many other sources for you to find it at.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks, Jacob.
thanks for having me,
Thank you,
guys.
Jacob.
Appreciate it.
Record.